What's up? This is Guy from a band. Today we're going to be talking about computers, specifically building future-proofed computers for music, gaming, video editing, all that sort of stuff. Let's get to it. We're going to be hitting these in no specific order, so just jump straight into it. CPU. Basically, if we're talking about future-proofing, you want something more powerful rather than medium grade. You don't want to get something that's just going to suit you for now. You want to get something that's going to suit you later down the line as well. If we're talking about gaming versus music and video editing, for gaming, generally you want something that is powerful, that has multiple cores, preferably with hyper-threading. Basically it's boosted, so instead of being 4 core, it'll be hyper-threaded to an 8 core. A bit complex. Might tackle that subject later on, may not, don't know. But basically, for gaming, you want something that's powerful for each core. So say if it's 3.4 GHz. If you're watching this in the future, that may seem a bit shit. For at the point where I'm recording this, 3.4 GHz. Say if it's a i7 4-core hyper-threaded to 8, that'd be the sort of thing you'd want if you're playing games, because games want more power over the cores they have. If you're talking about video and music editing, especially for video editing, because rendering videos takes a lot longer than just rendering music, naturally, because there's just so much more substance there. You actually want something that has more cores, so the power, but spread it out over more cores, because for rendering, you want more cores. For gaming, you want more power over those cores. Of course, if you are considering doing both, then you may just want to go for the overkill of getting something that's, say, 6, 8 cores that's hyper-threaded to 12, 16 cores. That also has the power behind it. But if you are just looking at doing one or the other, probably just want to look at one that's most suited for what you're going to be using it most for. So again, gaming, more power over the cores. Video, music rendering, more cores, so you can spread the load out over those cores. Next, we're going to be looking at RAM. Luckily for this, it's kind of the same for both gaming and rendering, music and video. At the moment, when I'm recording this, 16 more than enough for now and in the future. Again, if this is in the future, that may be a bit little, so a good way to know how much RAM you want is to play it by ear. How I would recommend doing this is looking at a high-end PC game that you would want to play, looking at the recommended requirements for that RAM, and then timesing that number by 3. So if you wanted to play a high-end game, and it recommended that you had 4 gigs of RAM for that game, then get 12 gigs of RAM. If recommended you had 6 gigs of RAM, then get 18 gigabytes of RAM. And this should do you good for future-proofing, for one, for games later on down the line. And also, for at the moment, you'll be able to run this game and have more applications because I forgot to say, CPU is sort of the bare grunt. This is what's going to be powering your computer. RAM is how many applications you can run. So the more RAM you have, the more applications you can run. CPU is the driving factor behind these applications, allowing you to run them. Next, the thing that combines everything together, the motherboard. Motherboard is the same again, pretty much. It's for gaming, for music, for video editing. You're basically just going to want the same thing. If you're going for games, you just want to make sure it has a good enough sound quality on the motherboard, so you'll be able to hear to a good extent all the environment around you when you have a headset on, or a surround sound system, or just a basic system if that's what you're running. For music, again, you want a good enough onboard sound for when you're just generally listening, but when you're actually recording music, you are going to be using an external sound recording device with higher quality anyway, so what's on the motherboard won't matter. Also, sort of for gamers, just a tip I've learned after having built a few computers, upgrading a few computers, all the stuff when it says, you know, runs 3-way SLI or 3-way Crossfire or whatever video card manufacturers want to call it later down the line, all this may sound amazing or does sound amazing, but in reality, the majority of gamers out there are just going to be running one video card at a time. When it comes to their video card starting to lag a bit, for the price of selling your card and using that money towards the new high-end graphics card that's out at the time versus the price of buying the exact same graphics card isn't worth it. It would be much more beneficial for you to just sell the card you have now and you put that money towards upgrading towards an even better graphics card, because chances are it's going to have more bells and whistles, it's going to have more features that your card doesn't have, and you won't get these features if you just get the exact same card and run SLI, and also you won't get as much as a performance boost, especially if your card is running 2-3 generations behind the line. Next one is hard drives. This is what most people know them as, but there's also another alternative out there called solid-state drives. Solid-state drives are the way to go. They are the way of the future. I have one myself. I've seen the performance difference between running your operating system and applications on a hard drive and a solid-state drive. Hard drives do just not compare in the slightest. You want a solid-state drive. Now, at the time of recording this video, solid-state drives are massively expensive. So a good alternative for this is just get a solid state drive around 120 gigs, possibly even 300 gigs if it's cheap enough, and use that solid state drive to just run your operating system, whichever operating system you may choose to run, and any applications that you do regularly use, so games that you play quite often. If you play one MMO online, or if you just have one game you'd like to play a lot, put that on solid state drive. It will reduce the loading times, the loading screen, make the game actually just run a bit tad smoother as well. And if you're doing video editing, music editing, recording, recording, you want to put those softwares on the solid state drive as well, because it will increase the performance of those as well. And then what you can do after that, because probably are going to be wanting more space than just 300 gigs or 120 gigs or whatever. And again, this is just how much the hard drive has on it. Once you've put the operating system and the apps on, you're going to have even less space for everything else. As an alternative for storage, then you switch to hard drives, because hard drives are cheap, and again, they are just a storage device, so you won't be using these applications all the time. You'll just be putting all the stuff onto that. So any videos that you may have, any pictures you may have, stuff that you won't be using in your day-to-day life, you'll put on the hard drive for storage for later that you may want to access later down the line. If you are watching this video in the future and solid state drives and hard drives are around the same price, or hard drives have actually just become obsolete, then just go for the solid state drive, because as I said, the performance difference between the two is just ridiculous. Alright, so those are the major performance factors in your build, but there is one more thing that you will have to consider when building. It won't affect the performance as much if you do it smartly, but again, this is something that is mandatory for a computer for it to function. Power supply. This is what takes the power from the wall socket, puts it into your computer, and allows everything to go. These are generally cheap parts, so there is no reason to cheap out and get a no-name brand one. What you want to do is go with the brand that you've heard other people use, or if you're on a website looking at these parts, go with the power supplies that are on that website. Go for those brands. There's no need to go for a weird brand or a no-brand power supply, because there's no point risking it at that price. Basically how I go about buying power supplies, and again, future-proofing them. Since your video card is generally the most power-hungry device in your system, I look at my video card's power consumption and add another 100 to 200 watts on top of that. Because again, we're looking at future-proofing. You don't know how power-hungry graphics cards are going to be down the line. Now, some people may feel comfortable with just sticking with the recommended power consumption for their graphics card that they're purchasing at the time, and that's fair enough. If you want to save the extra 30 or so bucks and you think it is a good trade-off, then go for gold. Do that if you want. But personally, for me, I am all about future-proofing, thinking about what can happen down the line, so I do go for the extra consumption. The price for me is worth the trade-off. Now, the rest of the computer, the case, glowing LED fans, anything else you may want to chuck in there, won't affect the performance as much. That being said, the colder your computer runs, the better performance it is going to have. So more fans will equal a colder computer and better performance overall. Alright guys, that's pretty much the system itself I've explained there. Of course, there are other peripherals that you can get, sound systems, monitors, keyboards, mice. Basically, it's based on how much you want to spend and what sort of stuff you're wanting to do. You can get high resolution monitors for bigger costs, but I'll probably cover all that in a later video as well. Alright guys, I was building a future-proof system for your gaming, music and video needs. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos that you'd like me to make, message me and I'll be more than happy to answer, either through message or through an explanation video if I feel like there are a lot of people that would benefit from this answer. Because I know for me, I'd much rather watch a quick video than read 5 pages of notes. Alright guys, this is Guy from a Band, signing off.